Oxnard. It holds an impressive network of industry, trade, and agricultural sites, and it is also in possession of vital ecological resources like the Ormond Beach wetland. There's something right next to the wetland that is not as well known. The Halaco Engineering Company Superfund site is part of a network of 1,322 Superfund sites in the United States. Of the 94 in California, one is right in our backyard. A Superfund site is any land in the United States that has been contaminated by hazardous waste and identified by the EPA as a candidate for cleanup because it poses a risk to human health and/or the environment. Pollution is no stranger to the shores of Ormond Beach. Historically, the site hosted an industrial drain. After Halaco Engineering Company bought the property, they operated an industrial smelter from 1965 to 2004. Over the years, waste began to accumulate into a slag heap, which now stands at 700,000 cubic yards, over 26 acres across. Halaco had a history for violating air quality and environmental permits, and the company filed for bankruptcy in 2002. In 2007, the site was given Superfund status. We spoke with Wayne Praskins, the EPA site manager, about the Halaco Superfund site. Mr. Praskins mentioned that most Superfund sites came from the 1950s post-war period, which was true for Halaco. The area was used by the aerospace and naval industry, which at the time had the large presence in Southern California.
First of all, it dates from roughly the early 60s.
Yeah.
And back then the city was much smaller. It didn't extend much beyond Wainimi Road.
According to Praskins, modern communities understand these industries harm the environment and would no longer allow them to set up shop in residential areas. The attitude of the Oxnard community is that overall they want it gone as soon as possible. One option is making the slag materials into concrete. This idea is being tested right now. It's the most likely solution to be implemented. However, pilot tests are expected in the next 3 to 5 years. Another solution is moving the slag somewhere else, but as of now, there are no proposed areas to move it. The last option would be capping the slag with concrete, but this poses its own problems. Will the cap hold the slag securely, or will it fail to prevent further contamination? Certain important pieces of legislation allow for communities to gather information about the Halaco Superfund site. The Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act, or EPCRA, came from public pressure to know about production, storage, and release of toxic chemicals in local communities. Part of EPCRA is the TRI, or Toxic Resources Inventory. It is an annual report where the EPA gathers information on industrial chemicals and makes it public. Unfortunately, the TRI is not a comprehensive list, and no one really knows what chemicals are currently sitting under the slag heap. We have identified a serious lack of accessible information to the site's chemicals, and it's clear that this lack of knowledge is part of environmental justice. Environmental justice is a call to recognize burdens imposed on poor and minority communities and do something about it. Wayne Praskins believes that environmental justice issues are common for Superfund sites, and a few examples of environmental justice appear at the Halaco Superfund site. Oxnard ranks among the top 20% of the most environmentally distressed communities in the state. Some members of the Oxnard community are unaware of the risk posed by the site. The homeless community that now occupies the site faces the consequences of living close to the hazardous material. Why is it that sites just like this one here appear more often in low-income neighborhoods? NIMBY, or Not in My Backyard, is the idea that operations with potentially hazardous externalities are moved out of sight to underprivileged communities. The Halaco site is an example of this.
The city and the air pollution control district and the water quality people all started going after Halaco for violating all the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act. And like any good American company, they fought it as long as they could, then they declared bankruptcy, and then they run away.
According to the Regional Water Quality Control Board, the slag heap that was built up over the 40 years of Halaco's existence emitted ammonia and radioactive elements such as thorium and uranium-238. Ventura County Air Pollution Control District received hundreds of complaints from community members who suffered headaches, sore throats, and other ailments from the fumes emitted by Halaco while it was in operation. Fortunately, in 2006, the EPA stepped in to remove some of the most immediate environmental threats and conduct an in-depth assessment of the contamination at the site. The EPA followed up by taking hundreds of soil samples from the waste pile, smelter site, and surrounding neighborhoods, as well as sediment, groundwater, surface water, air, fish tissue samples from the site and within the estuary. The EPA analyzed sand at Ormond Beach as well as offshore sandbars for radioactive isotopes in order to determine if contamination had migrated offshore. At that time, the EPA also removed all drums and other containers of hazardous substances and secured the property with a fence and signage. Taken together, we have just scraped the surface of the complexities of the Halaco site. The process that is underway takes years of work and requires the dedicated attention of experts, decision makers, and the community.
the federal law tries to go after property owners to get all the funds, and it literally almost takes an act of Congress to authorize a big pile of money in 1 or 2 fiscal years to really get rid of a site.
We have identified an opportunity for the community to get involved. There are grant programs such as the Technical Assistance Grant, which pays to have experts explain the site and its risks and facilitate community meetings with the EPA. We recommend that concerned citizens who want to participate in their community's future apply for this grant. Citizens do have a role to stay informed and to stand for the health of their communities. It is our responsibility to educate ourselves about the site and participate in the decision-making process.
And everybody wants it to be a wetlands. It should be a wetlands. It was a wetlands. You're just trying to go back to what it was. Nature wants it to be a wetland.
Area or anything like that? Like, is there?
That's not in my backyard.
Not in your backyard.
That's pretty much where we're at. That's what we're talking about.